The global situation with the spread of COVID-19 continues to be rather worrisome. Recently, the Director General of the WHO reiterated that the world today is challenged by the highly dangerous pathogen, the pandemic of which is the most serious emergency which has ever been declared by the organization. So far, there are no signs of slowdown of this infection. On the contrary, the coronavirus is increasingly spreading all over the planet, and the statistic has been doubled. We have passed the number of 17 million of cases of infection, and the dynamic of its spread in various countries and regions stays the same, and we see signs of a possible second wave of the epidemic. And recently, WHO consolidated the efforts of specialized UN agencies on establishing a database of for the exchange of the best international practices. And launching this initiative will seem to improve the resilience potential of the countries in fight against COVID-19 and make the measures more effective. As we see from the local outbreaks of this disease in separate states, the seemingly taming of the coronavirus can be altered by reversals in the dynamic. And it seems that mastering this challenge can only be possible through collective efforts. According to the evaluation of this epidemic situation, make it impossible to talk about full relaxation of the restrictions introduced by our country on the entry of foreign citizens into our country, as well as for exiting for our citizens through state borders via various checkpoints, including aerial ones. Nevertheless, we can talk about gradual relaxation of the restrictions in international air travel. According to the order of the government of the Russian Federation of 24th of July this year, from 1st of August, we will be receiving the citizens arriving through flights from Great Britain, Tanzania, and Turkey, and we will be welcoming citizens of these countries as well as people with residence permits from these countries. Moreover, people living in these countries and people which have residence permits for these countries that are citizens of countries with visa-free travel, according to agreements with Russia, can also arrive through those ways. Nevertheless, we have to understand that visas in Great Britain, Turkey, and Tanzania will only be emitted only to the citizens of the respective countries. Citizens of other countries, which are, for the time being, are on the territory of those countries, will not be given such visas. As far as other countries are concerned, the meticulous work regarding them continues. Our ministry monitors the rules, establishes the monitoring of the rules of entry of Russian citizens into foreign states in the conditions of the pandemic, and communicates the information to Rosaviation and Rospotrebnadzor, and this includes the analysis of the readiness of our partners to receive international flights and introducing special requirements. This includes the need of having a PCR testing certificate and quarantine for foreigners, as well as their placement in observation facilities. Rospotrebnadzor monitors the epidemiological situation in foreign states, and the positive dynamic in epidemics makes it possible of talking about re-establishing the air travel with other countries, which would correspond to the necessary criteria, including the number of new cases over 14 days, less than 40 people per 100,000 people, average daily increase in cases less than 1%, etc. We also would like to draw attention that the people arriving from abroad have to go through sanitary control and have to have with them necessary documentation demonstrating and proving that they have tested negative for COVID-19 and that the samples of this testing was collected less than 72 hours prior to their arrival in the Russian Federation. And traditionally, just a few words regarding the return of Russian citizens in the situation of the pandemic. We have often said that lots of our citizens were stranded in foreign countries due to the transportation collapse and finally managed to come back to Russia. Since we launched such algorithm, over 63,000 people returned to Russia, and over 53,000 of them were transported thanks to the Russian air travel companies. Thanks to the cooperation between Great Britain, Turkey, Tanzania and Russia, we continue the charter flights, and we have conducted flights from Alicante to London and many other state capitals. And we also evacuated 170 Russian citizens from the Philippines, despite the difficulties with the previous 2 charter flights. Thanks to this, several dozens of Russian citizens decided against traveling from Manila to Vladivostok. That's their right to decide so. But they will be able to use the regular flights in order to come back to Russia. In the upcoming week, we will have 2 flights from the US, from Miami and Los Angeles. We received the greatest number of appeals from there, and we see that the number of appeals is greater with the upcoming academic year. And lots of people also point to the difficult situation with COVID in the United States as another reason for coming back. We also renew flights from Bangkok, Phuket, and Goa. We continue monitoring the situation in the remotest parts of the planet, where the flights have not been carried out in order to provide the maximum help to the citizens there, and these hybrid efforts have been very effective. And since the transportation possibilities grow, the greater number of Russian citizens will be able to come back home. And now, before we pass to other issues, in the upcoming time, we await the comment from Ambassador of Belarus on the situation with Russian citizens stranded in Belarus. In the situation of coronavirus, since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, Russia has been providing help to the Transcaucasus states, different kinds of humanitarian aid. This includes the free-of-charge deliveries of the new testing systems Vector for laboratory diagnostic of COVID in various countries, including Azerbaijan and Armenia. We provide practical and methodological help. It's carried out by the brigades of Russian specialists from specialized medical institutions, and according to the agreements we have with the receiving states, we also provide help through our army medics. For example, in Armenia, we have a group of Russian military specialists, and their joint medical detachment conducts disinfecting efforts. Moreover, the experts from the reference, based on the facilities of the reference center from Stavropol Anti-Plague Institution, experts in Abkhazia and South Ossetia underwent practical training with test systems Vector. Moreover, on 27th of July in Rome, through a video conference, the Foreign Ministry of Russia signed an agreement with FAO regarding providing help worth of $10 million, helping Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda and South Sudan to fight plague of locust. It was signed by Viktor Vasilyev, the representative of Russia at FAO, and on the part of FAO by the First Deputy Director General Beth Bechtel. And the population of the desert locust since the beginning of 2020 has increased by the factor 400, and this unprecedented threat put in danger the food security and lives of over 40 million people in those regions. And the situation is exacerbated by the coronavirus pandemic. And according to the humanitarian call of FAO to react to the spread of desert locusts in the countries of the Greater Horn of Africa, there will be a need for over $300 million. So far, we have mobilized $130 million, and the Russian contribution will not be able to liquidate this plague fully, but it will confirm our commitment to helping African countries with this ordeal. Now, going on to the situation in Venezuela, the situation with COVID still is worrisome. The main sites of infection are situated in the areas adjacent to the border with Colombia, where the migrants from Venezuelan migrants come back home. And we call upon the South American countries to increase their cooperation with Venezuelan colleagues in joint prevention of coronavirus, especially among the most vulnerable population. And in this respect, we welcome the practical realization of the framework of the humanitarian agreement signed on the 1st of June between Venezuelan parties and the Pan American Health Organization. It's important to note that certain funds were unfrozen. I'm talking about the Venezuelan funds, which were frozen by American authorities, and they will be used by the PAHO for buying individual protective gear, diagnostics, and their transportation to Venezuela. And, of course, this sum amounts to $20 million. And the overall amount of the Venezuelan funds frozen by the U.S. amounts to $116 billion. It's important to note that the mainstream media try to pose this situation as a victory on the part of Juan Guaido, but I should note that he himself first welcomed the illegal sanctions and freezing of Venezuelan funds. And it's important to remember that the realization of the humanitarian agreement of 1st of June should be fully implemented by all three parties that signed it and should serve the vital needs of the population. It's clear that the funds that have been unfrozen are not enough for satisfying the humanitarian needs of Venezuela. It's important that Washington completely gave up its policy of unilateral restrictive measures blocking the external economic activities of Caracas and gave the Venezuelan government ability to freely purchase medical treatments and vital goods. Only then Venezuelan people will have the chance to effectively fight the pandemic. In December, there will be elections which are established by the Constitution into the National Assembly. And of course there will be certain difficulties. And it's obvious that there cannot be settlement without such elections. And such is the new reality that should be taken into account by all the responsible political powers. And we welcome the efforts to involve a wide spectrum of political parties in the election process. We would like to reiterate that we see this election process as the key element of settlement, and we would ask our partners to refrain from unconstructive criticism and intends to undermine election process, not even mentioning the violent overthrow of the legitimate authorities in Venezuela. And we expect that all members of the international community will foster beneficial conditions for the Venezuelans to produce constructive and compromising solutions for the existing process. And meanwhile, in Vienna, we finished another round of talks regarding the Russian-American strategic track. And I would like to remind you about our cooperation with the United States on the strategic topics over the last years. In 2014, because of the actions and initiatives of the Obama administration, the regular dialogue, including on the issues of international security and strategic stability, was interrupted and actually frozen for 3.5 years. In summer 2017, Presidents Putin and Trump arrived at an agreement that there is a need to re-establish the context on strategic issues and arms control. Since then, we have conducted 4 rounds of full-format consultations at the level of deputy foreign ministers on this topic in September 2017, July 2019, and then June and January this year. And up to this day, it's hard to qualify them as regular contacts because every time they were headed by new people and the delegations were largely altered in their composition. This year, on the order of the presidents of Russia and the United States, the context on this strategic agenda have been galvanized, and we have arrived at agreements regarding space security. I'm talking about the entire system of various issues, including the danger of emergence of arms in space. During the last round, on 22nd of June, we also additionally established the need for conducting meetings between experts on the topics of verification and transparency, as well as military doctrines and potentials. Americans mainly focused on nuclear weapons. We on our part proposed taking a broader view and talking about all kinds of armaments which can serve strategic purposes. And these three topics, space security, second, doctrines and potentials, and third, transparency and verifications, were talked about in the Austrian capital on 27th through 30th of July, and the parties have to study in great detail the results of this round of meetings, and Russia is open to a dialogue, further dialogue with Washington on various strategic topics in order to prevent further deterioration of international agreements in this sphere, and we are ready to establish further cooperation with the United States, especially in the field of arms control, but only on the basis of on parity basis and the principle of mutual accommodation. And I would like to thank the government and Foreign Ministry of the Austrian Republic for fostering this round of strategic dialogue. Against this productive backdrop, we are reporting with regret and concern the information about the U.S. side carrying out shipments of arms and military equipment to Pristina in the Balkans, and this is incompatible with the militarization of the self-proclaimed Republic of Kosovo. The idea of Washington is to help the Kosovans to create their own army, which is in flagrant violation of the Resolution 1244 by the Security Council of the United Nations, which dictates dismantling of any militarized formations and allows for presence exclusively of international peacemaking contingents. And we would like to call everyone who is not indifferent to the situation in the Balkans to refrain from steps which can destabilize the situation. Another topic is that we see positive developments in the Minsk agreements, and we have on the 22nd of July in Kiev, Donetsk, the contact group arrived at certain positive changes, and the agreements which they arrived at will help to save human lives and prevent further demolition of infrastructure. At the moment, we see a truce in the contact line, which is mainly being complied with, and we also see as an important step forward this gradual realization of the Minsk agreements and the decision of the Paris meeting of the Normandy 4 in December 2019, and we hope that the ceasefire will help to resolve the situation and will serve to the purposes of process of settlement of this intra-Ukrainian conflict. Another topic regarding the help to the Russian citizens that are now in penitentiary institutions in the United States. At the moment, there are around 100 Russian citizens in such facilities, and most of them are serving sentences for offences of non-violent nature. And unfortunately, quite often we see that these penitentiary institutions evade the duty to provide adequate medical treatment to our citizens serving time there, even to those who suffer from chronic diseases, and quite often they delay such medical examinations or do not carry it out at all. Only after numerous appeals on the part of the Russian embassy in the United States, we managed to make them provide necessary qualified medical aid to our citizens. We also see, against the backdrop of COVID pandemic, that there is a shortage of necessary individual protection gear among the prisoners, including face masks and gloves. Russian citizens have been tested for COVID, and all of them tested negative. We pay closest attention to the health and the conditions in which our citizens are serving sentences or awaiting decision of American courts. And against the backdrop of this pandemic, we continue to provide help to our citizens in penitentiary institutions, and we will continue fighting for the rights of the most vulnerable categories of the prisoners, whose health and life is in danger. And we have noted the statement by the press secretary of the EEAS, who was at the laying down of the universal amphibious assault ships. And the talking points they use demonstrate that they cannot rationally assess the situation in the region and are indifferent to the interests of the people living in the Russian Crimea. And we would like to confirm that our efforts to strengthen the defense potential of the Russian fleet in the Black Sea waters is aimed exclusively at the stability and security in the region. And when Ukrainian citizens complain regarding the restrictions of entry, we would like to note that we have introduced restrictions because of the pandemic, and they are applied to the majority European countries, including Ukraine. And as far as the violations of international law are concerned, we would like to draw the European authorities' attention to the actions of the Kievan authorities. For example, we would like to propose to the European Union to stop retranslating the unsubstantiated accusations on the part of Ukraine and pay attention to the anti-human actions of Kiev that cut water and energy supply to Crimea.
On the 24th of July, an American magazine, The Nation, published an article restoring the picture around the manipulations that occurred when OPCW was preparing a report regarding the use of chemical weapons in Syria in Duma on the 7th of April 2018. Despite the fact that these facts have already been broadly known, it is the first time that they make an appearance on the pages of such a respectable and reputable media outlet in the West. It's been over a year that international independent experts, representatives of the general public and politicians, as well as journalists, are discussing this. They have even filed a petition to the countries that make part of the CPCW, and a petition to the UN Secretary General, being its depository, asking them to inquire into the situation and undertake urgent measures to restore trust for the Technical Secretariat. We and like-minded nations raised this issue in OPCW, but no relevant reaction has followed. We are under the impression that there are some people who are trying to sweep it under the carpet lest it becomes known, in order to justify the actions of the United States, the UK and France that carried out missile strikes against an independent state in violation of the UN Charter and international law. We well know what such adventures and provocations typically end with. We expect that we will manage to inquire into this unseemly situation to bring OPCW to its depoliticized technical and professional work as provided for by the CPCW. New York Times published a high-profile publication about the cooperation between Facebook and a Ukrainian website named StopFake. StopFake is reported to have a connection with right-wing radicals and nationalists in Kiev. Since April 2019, Facebook has been cooperating with this website in fact-checking. Russia has long known about the blatantly anti-Russian nature of this website that manically pursues and misinterprets Russian language publications in Facebook, as well as about its connections with right-wing radicals. We are disappointed that Facebook chose such an unreliable partner in verification of information. The examples of posts that StopFake deemed to be untrustworthy leave us in no doubt that the purpose of this cooperation is pursuing political censorship of Russian language content in Facebook. We call upon Facebook to be more responsible in choosing partners and consider such behavior of the American tech giant as another confirmation of a coordinated policy in purging the international information space from Russian content. On to Afghanistan. We welcome the 3-day ceasefire celebrating the Eid al-Adha proclaimed by the government and the Taliban movement. However, it does not resolve the key problem and the necessary task of launching inter-Afghan negotiations. We call on the warring parties to use this pause in the armed conflict to bring down the level of violence in the country, to finalize the exchange of prisoners and move on to a constructive dialogue for the purposes of national reconciliation. Another issue we want to cover has to do with foreigners and stateless persons. On the 24th of July, Federal law dated 24th of April 2020 about the amendments to the federal law on the citizenship of the Russian Federation, according to which the conferment of citizenship becomes an exclusive prerogative of regional offices of our Ministry of Interior if the applicant resides in the Russian Federation. Such changes are in line with the Russian President's concept of the national migration policy for 2019-2025 in the purposes of the demographic development of Russia and attracting foreigners capable of successfully integrating into the Russian society. The new law also provides for a number of measures simplifying the procedure of conferment of citizenship for people who move to Russia. 1. All categories of applicants are no longer required to renounce their previous citizenship of another state. The law no longer specifies the minimal period the applicant has to have lived in Russia before applying. The applicants are no longer required to prove that they have a livelihood if they follow the simplified procedure. For people who got professional education in Russia after the 1st of July 2002, the mandatory period of working in Russia before applying for Russian citizenship has been reduced from 3 years to 1 year. Citizens of Belarus, Kazakhstan, Moldova and Ukraine permanently residing in Russia now have the right to apply for Russian citizenship following a simplified procedure. Foreigners and stateless persons married to Russian citizens, having common children with them and permanently residing in Russia can now also follow a simplified procedure. And now about more emblematic issues, which are no less important. On the 25th of July, traditional memorial celebrations in Slovenia near the Russian chapel took place, commemorating Russian prisoners of war who died in the First World War when they were constructing a mountain road. This site was constructed in 1916 at the place of the tragedy and became the symbol of friendship and the place of annual meetings. From Slovenia, the President of the country, the President of the National Assembly, as well as key ministers and MPs, representatives of political circles, activists of societies of friendship and anti-fascists, NGOs, as well as cultural figures and artists took part. The Russian delegation was headed by the ambassador. We are grateful to our partners for their careful attitude to Russian military memorials in Slovenia. We consider these annual ceremonies to be a symbol of respect for the memory of our ancestors and the mutual desire of Russia and Slovenia to be careful about the historic memory. On the 1st of August, the Republic of Benin, Russia has been entertaining friendly relations with, celebrates the 60th anniversary of its independence and sovereignty. It's been over 50 years that the difficult colonial era has been over. In the 17th century, the state of Dahomey was founded in the territories of the modern Benin and Togo. In late 19th century, France conquered Dahomey, extended protectorate over it and included it into French West Africa. The people of Dahomey began the liberation fight back in 1916-1917. France conferred the right to create its own parliament in Dahomey and representation in the French parliament as an overseas territory. On the 11th of July 1960, France recognized Dahomey's sovereignty, and on the 1st of August 1960, Dahomey proclaimed independence. And in November 1975, it was called the Republic of Benin. Today, Benin is exercising a moderate, a balanced foreign policy. We congratulate the people of Benin on their national holiday and wish them peace, welfare and prosperity. On the 3rd of August, the Republic of Niger is going to celebrate the 60th anniversary of its independence. The people of Niger has come a long way fighting for their independence. In late 19th century, France finished the colonization of the territory of the modern Niger, and in 1884 officialized the right of property. The actions of the French colonists were rather ruthless. Entire villages were wiped out. Niger was one of the poorest colonies in Africa. At the beginning of the 20th century, national liberation fight became armed, and these attempts were violently quelled. In 1958, Niger received the rights of an autonomous republic, and in 1960, it became fully independent. Today, Niger is pursuing a path of democratic development, counters the existing problems in the social and economic spheres, and makes a significant contribution in collective African efforts in countering the terrorist threats in the Sahara-Sahel region. We congratulate the people of Niger on their holiday and wish them new success, peace and prosperity. And I would like to tell about the international award named after Khaled Al-Khatib. A few reporters were awarded it for their works from a conflict zone. The Khaled Al-Khatib International Memorial Awards was founded to commemorate the 25-year-old journalist who worked for RT Arabic. He was killed by a missile strike by fighters in Syria on the 30th of July 2017. In his reports, he covered the fights between the Syrian governmental forces and terrorists. In 2018, President Putin signed a decree awarding the Medal for Valor to Khaled Al-Khatib. His family received it during the first ceremony. The award is given in 3 categories: Best Work from the Conflict Zone, a short video, a long video, and text. There were journalists from 16 countries competing for this award. The first question is from RIA News. How would you comment on the situation around Russian sailors detained in Greece and charged with illegal migrant smuggling? The situation around the arrest of Russian citizens in the territorial waters of the Hellenic Republic and charged with assistance to illegal migrant smuggling is something we follow closely. We correspond with their families of the sailors and coordinate the consular assistance. Our embassy in Greece also ensures respect for all international and Greek laws regarding the interests of our citizens who were detained or sentenced in Greece. The workers of our embassy maintain contacts with our compatriots and inform their families in Russia, and provide consultation assistance, organize consular visits in Athens and Nefplio, and when necessary provide certificates of absence of criminal record, and give them lists of Greek lawyers known to our embassy, as well as information about the procedure of extradition. The second question is also from RIA News. It's about the Russian-American meeting in Vienna on strategic problems we have already talked about. The question is like this. American officials have been talking that in meeting with Russian representatives, they have been discussing issues of trilateral arms control. Does it mean China's involvement? We reiterate that we are speaking about the discussions following up on the discussions between our heads of state to work upon Russian-American agenda on security, stability and arms control. During the latest full-format round of the strategic dialogue, the parties have reaffirmed their interest in pursuing interaction and defined topics for further expert cooperation on the bilateral level. As for possible bilateral discussions in ensuring predictability and moderateness in missile and nuclear spheres, our position is known. We have made it known on multiple occasions. Russia is open for a dialogue, with the understanding that it would be counterproductive to force anyone to participate in such a dialogue. It is only possible on the basis of consensus, with the consideration for legitimate interests and approaches of all countries. To pursue work, we deem it important to involve the UK and France, that are the US allies in NATO, that calls itself a nuclear alliance. Question from VGTRK. Trump's special envoy for arms control recently stated that the American president would never agree to limit ABMs. How would you comment on this? Are anti-ballistic missiles discussed during the strategic dialogue discussions? After leaving the ABM treaty, the US initiated unrestricted increase of their ABMs. Their unilateral actions in this sensitive sphere in Europe and Asia-Pacific, and their efforts to create an outer space level of ABMs make a negative impact on international security and exacerbate relations in various regions of the world, creating ground for resuming an arms race in the nuclear sphere. And Russia and China are listed in the American ABM policy review as potential adversaries. Russian officials have given assessment to America's actions in ABM sphere on multiple occasions. Naturally, we have also touched upon this topic in Vienna during the discussion on doctrines and potentials. We call upon the United States to be guided by the generally accepted principle about the inadmissibility of reinforcing your own security to the detriment of that of other countries. A few more questions from a Greek TV channel, Open TV. Number 1. Turkey proclaimed that there would be discussions with the Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Vershinin regarding control over Sirte and its surroundings. Turkey and Sarraj demand that Haftar and the so-called Russian mercenary leave Sirte and the Al Jufra air base. What is Russia's stance? What is the essence and the logic of our negotiations with Turkey on Libya? Russian-Turkish consultations that occurred in Ankara on the 21st and 22nd of July are in line with our work and in accordance to the instructions from our presidents on ensuring a sustainable ceasefire in Libya. The first round of such consultations took place in Istanbul in mid-June. Relevant discussions will be held in Moscow soon. The agenda involves a number of technical issues we are trying to agree upon with Turkey, including the dislocation of the warring parties at the moment of proclaiming a ceasefire. In order to do that, we need to be guided by the opinion of the Libyan protagonists immediately implied in the face-off. That is why finding compromise will require some more time. The next question. The US, Turkey, their representatives and the media accuse Russia of violating the Libyan embargo. You have pointed out that thousands of fighters moved to Syria from Libya. How was it made possible? Who violates the embargo? It's not the first time that we hear ungrounded accusations. It's not a secret that the Libyan conflict is something a number of states are implicated with via providing arms and transferring foreign fighters to the war zone. That is why your question is best asked to the United Nations Security Council Sanction Committee. The next question is from Moscow-Baku Committee. Turkey has underscored Russia's special role in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict settlement. It was touched upon during the phone talk at the initiative of Turkey. The parties expressed their readiness to coordinate efforts to stabilize the situation on the border between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Can we speak about mutual understanding or a shared position between Russia and Turkey regarding the Nagorno-Karabakh situation? It is with great concern that Russia has been following the situation on the border between the two friendly countries, Armenia and Azerbaijan. We are convinced that the long-standing Nagorno-Karabakh conflict should be resolved exclusively by peaceful means via diplomatic discussions. Our position is shared by the US, France, the United Nations, CIS, NATO and the EU. The Russian leadership has done its utmost to prevent further escalation, including via speedy interaction with key partners in the regions. During his recent phone talks with his Azerbaijani and Armenian colleagues, Minister Lavrov received assurances that Baku and Yerevan support such an approach. We had a substantial discussion regarding the situation in Transcaucasia and in Nagorno-Karabakh on the 27th of July at the level of heads of state and on the 23rd of July on the levels of ministers of foreign affairs. Russia and Turkey believe that there is no alternative for a political and diplomatic solution to the existing problems on the basis of the international law in the interests of the Azerbaijani and Armenian peoples. We intend to work with our partners, including Turkey, to prevent further escalation of the situation in Transcaucasia and to assist a political dialogue between Yerevan and Baku. And the last question is from TASS. How would you comment on the information from Azerbaijani Ministry of Defense about their intention to hold joint exercises with Turkey, including on the border with Armenia? According to the information we have, according to the Azerbaijani-Turkish agreement on military cooperation between the 29th of July and the 10th of August, Azerbaijan is going to hold joint planned tactical and flying exercises with 5,000 troops, 150 armed machines and 150 units of artillery and air defense equipment. We've been following the situation closely given the recent large-scale Armenian-Azerbaijani border conflict and call upon both parties to show restraint given the current situation. Thank you for your attention.